All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Halfmoon podcast with Charles and Patsy Eisenstein. So, if you recall, last time we talked a bit about the shamanic tradition of Taiwan with the Dangi and the Angyi, the male and female shamans. And Patsy alluded to different roles that these shamans play. And I was very interested in that because I wondered if maybe there's like a hint that this isn't just about the role of shamans, but I wonder if there's something that we can extrapolate about the role of men and women, the masculine and the feminine, and how they weave together. And even, on a more conceptual level, matriarchy and patriarchy, the society from which these stories come, and the society that Patsy grew up in was very patriarchal. Classical Chinese society was very patriarchal, or so it seems. In many ways, it certainly was. But one of the misunderstandings that people have about patriarchy and matriarchy is that a society is either one or the other. But a society can be both, and I believe that a healthy society is both. And the matriarchy may not be so visible to our patriarchal vision, but it can be lurking underneath and possibly even more powerful than the superficial, visible patriarchal level. So I just, who's really in charge here? When we were married, Patsy, I remember I used to joke, we have a very traditional relationship. I said, I'm the man, so I make all the decisions. And Patsy, she tells me what my decision is going to be. So that was, in part, just a kind of a joke and a way to laugh at some of our conflicts and stuff. But I think there might be actually something wise within there too, or not. Maybe it's just a joke. But anyway, so Patsy, I'll turn it over to you. Anything on your mind, but especially if you can reiterate the different functions between the Angyi and the Dangi in Taiwanese society.
Okay. Hi. I like the joke part, so I want to add to the joke.
Okay.
Another one is the head of the household. The head of the household is always man, right?
Yeah.
But the invisible female is the neck. Nobody noticed the neck, but it's neck that does the turning of the head, right?
Right.
Yeah, so I really love that aspect. I don't mind being the neck. Yeah, being,
Yeah.
in some ways, having the power is more powerful than being seen as having the power. You see?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember in a discussion one time, I can't remember what the context was, but it was about the Kogi, the tribe in South America, Colombia, the indigenous nation there that have been very, very protective of their territorial and cultural integrity, and until recently did not allow anyone to come into the territory. And so finally, the filmmaker and his crew were greeted and brought into the territory, and it was by a group of men, and they were just seeing mostly the men, and they're like, "Oh, you have a very patriarchal society, that only the men get to come out and greet the visitors." And the Kogi laughed at him. They said, "No, we're a matriarchal society, and therefore the men are the ones who expose themselves to the dangers of the outside world and do this trivial task of greeting the visitors." So they very much disagreed with the Western understanding of patriarchy and ultimately of power. But yeah, anyway.
So I'll
Yeah.
talk about the differences in the societal role between Angyi and Dangi. Okay, so Dangi usually you see them serve as like a assistant priest to temples, and they serve in kind of ceremonial functions, and they will perform functions like channeling deity in public, and usually that happens in a very subtle and abrupt way, like very intense. Like it's like you're normal in the moment, and the next moment they were like possessed.
Yeah, it's not
And
subtle at all. It's
no, not subtle at all. It's
yeah.
like, did I say subtle?
I
I
think
say
that's what I heard. Yeah.
I try to say not subtle,
Oh,
not this opposite of subtle, not subtle, and then very abrupt.
yeah.
And they will lead firework walk, and they will make loud noises, and
Yeah,
they'll
I saw one once, Patsy. He was like carrying in his bare hands like this red hot brazier, you know?
right, yeah.
Yeah.
So they generally their role is it's very visible, and it's oftentimes in a very public environment. And I'm saying it in my own word. I never
Yeah.
heard it say that way. So they seem to be serving as a validation of deity, like in public. Ang on the other hand, is
Validation. I'm sorry, sweetie. What do you mean?
deity, God,
No, a validation of them? You mean
like
like a
confirmation or
okay.
delivering message. So through observing them, the society get to witness
Okay.
God's power working.
Like almost a representation of them or
Yeah,
emanation of them, like they're possessed by the deity.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like and also serve as a medium to
Yeah.
connect deity and this material realm. And so an Anyi is kind of like a householder type of service. In fact, when you go to visit an Anyi, you're not required to give them money, especially with small things such as shoujing. How do you say that? Shoujing.
Oh gosh. To like um in one context is to calm a baby to that who has like been like shocked by something. So
Yeah.
it's a kind of it's almost kind of an exorcism, but it's to bring the spirit back, kind of to like
Yeah. So
mend the spirit, maybe.
the belief, the background belief is that a soul enter into the body, and the body is not mature enough yet. So the soul oftentimes is still very perceptive of other realities, but because of the soul is in this little tiny body, and it couldn't yet like completely step to one side, and they could be scared or seeing something that disturb its human peace, so to speak. So the ceremony of Sojin usually is, light incense, invoke deity, and then the Anyi would say things, and then brush the babies. And sometimes it's depending on the age of the child. Sometimes it's a incantation or words will be speaking into paper and then burned and then drop into water, and then the baby would drink the ashes. There's ceremonies of different type to meet different needs, and usually is to calm the psyche of the child and the parents. So and the payment for that usually is whatever offering the parents wants to bring to the altar, and the Angyi will keep that. So it's very, very modest offering. And also one of the Angyi's important role is to channel deceased ancestors for consultation. And so her role oftentimes is like a community mediator. They would channel ancestors from people who are having conflict, and she would channel ancestors from both sides to bring information that were necessarily available to the people who are alive today, and to consult them on how to resolve the present conflict through the lens of the past or the invisible realm. So
Yeah.
it's very interesting. They almost like a combination of community shaman and community mediator.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that I can imagine those situations, where there's some dispute in the family, and okay, let's see what the ancestors say, because we can't resolve this. Maybe somebody who has lived a complete life and integrated all of the lessons of that life will have information for us so that we don't have to reenact their dramas. I think that one way to understand the value of communication with ancestors, even if, your whatever ancestor was a horrible person, or a very unwise person who you think that's the last person you would go to for advice about your dispute. However, what happens, I think, in the transition process to the other world is that you review your whole life and all of your choices, and you integrate all of the lessons to be learned from that. So the ancestor is speaking, it's almost like the worse a person he was, the better advice he's going to give, especially if you have inherited some of those patterns. The ancestor is commenting from the other side of those patterns. So I think that, there's all this stuff today about collective intelligence and non-hierarchical decision making and like all these different governance models. I haven't come across any of them that include the ancestors. So, yeah, sorry for this long diversion, but do you remember any times where you got to witness this Angi coming and facilitating?
No, not myself personally, because as I said, all of these direct experiences were secondhand,
Mhm.
hearing from adults. And also, I was too young. I remember feeling scared about these kind of, when adults were talking about going to see Ang Yi and basically having their body possessed by ghosts. And it's very, for kids, it's like, I don't want to have anything to do with that. I don't even want to see it. It's a very scary thing. And I remember being frightened sometimes hearing those stories at night, right? And the wind blows, the candle moves, casts shadows. We would be like running into the blanket and covering up.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But as I grew up, my mother would be going to see these type of shaman and consultation for me. She loves going to I call it fortune telling, but not necessarily fortune telling, because sometimes the things that she brought back to tell me about me wasn't really about fortune telling, but more
Yeah.
like past telling.
Yeah. So much, um, a culture like Taiwan where these arts were highly developed. We don't really have the vocabulary in English to describe all of the different roles. And fortune telling is such a reduction of what actually goes on in some of these lineages. In some ways, it's more similar to what a psychologist would do, but it's not just that either.
Yeah, and I imagined the Dangi and On Yi's kind of a societal role. It's like the yin and yang,
Mhm.
right? It's like if you're missing one, it would feel imbalance.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And you said, you spoke a bit of how these shamanic roles were suppressed under the Japanese.
Mhm,
That would be from 1895 to 1945.
mhm.
Although, ironically, Japan itself has shamans of the same kind. And so I think that really the suppression was really even on a deeper level of modernity's rejection of such things, because Japan was very much in a state of rapid modernization. And then, in mainland China, then, when the communists came to power, they also pursued a path of headlong modernization and rejection of what they saw was, old feudalistic superstitions. And in Taiwan too, it was considered backward and right, Patsy. Like it wasn't like brutally suppressed, but it certainly wasn't encouraged, except for
Well,
one.
as far as like a Japanese suppressing Taiwan, that was before my time. I heard
Yeah,
it secondhand, so I couldn't tell you my direct experience.
yeah.
Mhm.
Well, I know a little bit of the history,
Mhm.
and part of the mythology of the KMT, the Kuomintang, the nationalist party that took over Taiwan in 1949, involved the brutality of the Japanese, which the story is actually a lot more complicated. Of all of their colonies, Taiwan was treated the best by the Japanese. And when I was there, like, people had a very positive opinion of Japan back when I first arrived in the 80s, and a lot of them had gone to school, to university in Japan, even, before World War II. I mean, it was a very different relationship than what the Japanese did to Korea or Manchuria. Anyway, but so the KMT had this kind of mythology that painted the Japanese occupation in much harsher terms. Not that there weren't terrible things that were done, but one reason that the traditions were able to survive then during the nationalist era of Taiwan is that, gosh, I hope this is interesting to people. People, I don't know. The Halfmoon podcast wasn't really supposed to be a history lesson, but I'll just finish it. Whatever. Taiwan the government wanted to present Taiwan as the real China. For a long time, they were struggling for recognition, and one by one, all of the major countries in the world recognized the communist government of China as the real China. So there was an interest in the Taiwanese government to uphold Chinese traditions, and some of these temple processions, and the Taoist arts were considered, distinctly Chinese, and so there was kind of a sanctuary for them for political reasons, even though Chiang Kai-shek himself was a Christian and didn't really believe in any of this, as far as I know.
Yeah. I actually learned about that much later. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there was a lot of censorship and
Yes, that's right.
and
But
fear.
at that time, like growing up in Taiwan in that way under a dictatorship, there's, if I had a choice right now, I actually rather return to that time because that time there's in some way it is a bubble for small villages like Taichung. Uh, Life is so much simpler and so much more beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
I'm not saying that I want dictatorship.
no,
That
no,
I
no.
use.
Yeah, be careful saying that, because it
I know,
looks
no
like this
way.
country's moving in that direction, doesn't it? Yeah. But yeah, so you were so what do you have for us today, Patsy? Do you have any further stories about
Yeah,
yeah.
because I was thinking about while we were talking about the feminine and masculine energy collaborating, I thought I will tell a story that I know of is directly involving like two deities working together from the heavenly realm, supporting humanity. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, okay. So remember the temple that we went to, Longshan Shi?
In Wanhua.
Yeah, in
In
Wanhua,
Wanhua.
right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Right.
that's a really amazing, like very, very traditional, hundreds of years old temple.
Yes, and it has both the Buddhist deity and the Taoist deities.
Yeah.
So Longshan Shi is an example of the 佛道合一,
Hmm.
the
The unity of Buddhism and Taoism.
yeah, okay. And so in the temple, there are many, many deity, and each of them has their own little shrine inside the temple. And one of them that I introduced to you is Yue Lao. Yue Lao is the moon elder, the moon immortal. So his job, his duty is to tie red thread between two lovers so they will be matched to have a marriage together. But it doesn't end here because a lot of time people will go to Yue Lao's shrine to offer prayers for their oftentimes parents, asking Yue Lao to help their child to find a good mate. But most people don't know. I know my mother taught me this. because she made offering on lunar calendar, July 7th, that it's also called Chinese Valentine. She would, light incense and make offering to the Qi Niu Ma. It's the seventh lady mother.
Yeah.
It's very cumbersome. That she's the seventh daughter of the Jade Emperor, and her heavenly job is to take the thread that connects two lovers and weave them with other threads into fabric. So her job basically is weave relationships.
So she's pretty much okay. So the Yue Lao, he like connects two people with a thread, two souls, and because that thread is attaching them, they will come together in this
Right.
lifetime.
Right.
And so, and then the Qiniang Ma, she weaves the social fabric.
Right.
Right. Because these threads have to all coordinate with each other. If I'm going to be with her, then that means that her brother is going to be related to my cousin and this and that. And like there's a whole, right?
Yeah.
So it makes sense. Yeah.
And it is said that the seasons and emotions are all part of the instrument of her loom. So when she's weaving, there's a lot, like drama, drama in the best way, best sense of the word, get created. And the prostration to Qiniang Ma is to bless her, to help us with better senses and skill to maintain our relationship in our marriage, particularly. So you just have Yue Lao tying, connecting the two of you isn't enough, basically. That's what he says. In order for the relationship, the marriage to be prosperous, beautiful, and harmonious, and being able to go through difficult time together, you need Qiniang Ma's help.
You need community. Gosh,
yes,
it's just that simple.
Yeah.
Try to keep a marriage together without help from community through the hard times. And I mean, that's one reason why there's so much divorce in this country. There's just no community to sustain a marriage. People maybe they should propitiate Qiniang Ma here.
Oh, totally. Yeah. I don't know if we can scientifically validate the effectiveness of that, but I know where the attention goes, it grows, right?
Yeah.
So when I set an intention to be better at hosting my relationship with others, it just gets better. And having a ceremony around it just reinforces the concentration of attention. At least is that for me. So I have a side story with Qiniang Ma. Actually, it's not a side story. It's a direct story. And I thought it's very interesting. Was why does that day become the day of, making offering to Qiniang Ma? Was because here's a story. Qiniang Ma, when she was in heaven weaving, and one day she heard this beautiful flute, and then she looked down on earth. There's this handsome cowherder sitting.
Oh, no.
sitting on the cow and playing his flute. And I thought that was very interesting because in Hindu, the supreme god is Krishna, right? And Krishna loves sitting on cow and play flute. So I wonder if there's a cross here, right? Yeah. So Qiniang Ma noticing a mortal playing flute on the cow. So she fell in love with the music. So she came down to visit him, and they fell in love with each other. And they were so in love, they didn't want to part. And then every day they hang out. And Qiniang Ma didn't weave her loom. And the cowherder didn't watch his cow and make his music. So both of them neglected their duty. And the Jade Emperor was like, oh, that's not good. Both of them have to go get back to their post. So he sent someone to deliver a order to them. So he said in this way, he said, actually, I don't remember the whole verse, but the important part is they can only meet on Qi Shi, meaning every 7 days. But qi xi could also meant on the seventh day of the seventh month in the new lunar year, because that day is also called qi xi. So the person who executed this order confused, thought that he meant once a year instead of once every week. So he carried out this divine order, and divine order is like gold seal. You can't go back and change it. So these two lovers can only meet each other once a year and for eternity. But what's very interesting to me was that the cowherder was supposed to be immortal, but because of the order that he was supposed to meet with Ginny once a year for eternity over the Milky Way. The Milky Way is another side story. Was the compassionate, like heavenly birds? They formed that bridge so they can, the cowherder and the journey can walk and meet in the middle of the bridge on the Milky Way. So that night was especially romantic and especially magnificent, looking up at the sky, imagining seeing these two lovers meet. And then the cowherders, however, I oftentimes think that, I thought he was immortal, but how come he continued to meet up with Journey? Oh, maybe he's because of that rule, not rule, whatever.
The divine order. He
Yeah,
had to
that
become
divine
immortal
order.
for
Yes.
it to be fulfilled.
Yeah. So his status changed, and then he somehow exists in another reality, continue to fulfill this divine order. I just thought that it was such a beautiful story.
Yeah. So you also called her a journey. That's like a weaving woman.
Yes.
Right?
七娘妈
Yeah.
is journey.
Journey. Okay. Wow.
And this story is known as 牛郎和织女.
Mhm.
牛郎织女.
Yeah. I think most of us can relate to the experience of falling in love and neglecting your duties, and just like everything else seems unimportant. And ultimately, not only does it not serve the world, but it doesn't serve love either. It doesn't serve the relationship either. So it would make sense that the Jade Emperor would put limits on such a thing. I mean, usually we put limits on it. We say, okay, I got to get back to my job. I have to get back to my responsibilities. But for those of us who don't make that choice, eventually reality will intrude on the honeymoon, and it won't last forever. So that's a very, very rich story. So many, in Greek mythology, there's so many stories like that too, where very often it's Zeus falling in love with a mortal maiden, a mortal woman, but sometimes it's a goddess falling in love with a, especially handsome man. And
do you know one? I know very little about Western mythology.
I wish we had my brother on. He would be able to recount them in much more detail. I would mess it up if I tried.
Wow, that sounds awesome.
What?
Yeah.
My brother?
Yeah.
Yeah.
John is a very good storyteller.
I mean, I could call him up right now and see if he is available. He can come on. All right. Well, it took a little longer for us to get a hold of John than I had hoped, and to summon him from the hinterlands where he had been roaming. But we have John here. But anyway, if I'm wearing different clothes and have a longer beard than I did 2 minutes ago, that's why. So yeah, I called John and said, hey, aren't there a lot of Greek myths? I seem to remember a bunch of them where this kind of thing happened, where a god or an immortal falls in love with a mortal, and they usually don't end real well. They usually end up with somebody becoming, added to the heavens as a star, which seems like poor consolation for the tragedies that usually unfold from such liaisons. But anyway, I asked John, and he said he'd come up with something. And so I think he's actually going to bring us a Greek myth from Ireland. Is that right, John?
Well, it's not really a Greek myth from Ireland, but
What? I thought they were all
yeah,
Greek myths.
not quite sure how that works. But yeah, you're right. Like I thought about it a while, and there's all sorts of stories from Greek mythology about these liaisons, as you said. They never end well, but most of them don't seem to be really dealing with romantic love as such. But I think you called it falling in lust or something. Um, so to find one where there really was something that we would call love involved, I did think of one story from Ireland, which I can tell you briefly.
Yeah, John, thank you. That'd be great. I'd love to hear this story.
Yeah, sure. I mean, first, a couple of things. I'm not a scholar. I'm not an expert. I don't read Old Irish. I can't even pronounce Old Irish names. So, any experts that are out there, my apologies if I offend you in some way, but I'll do the best I can.
All right. Well, I'm already offended, so
Good.
I'll keep my mouth shut.
I'm glad I haven't lost my touch. So, our story begins at Samhain, which is, as you know, the precursor to our Halloween. And the warrior elite of one of the leading, most powerful confederacies in Ireland has gathered for the celebration. But before they can begin, they have to wait on two of their most prominent warrior heroes who have yet to show up. And so they're just kind of sitting around trying not to get bored. And then they perceive a flock of beautiful birds have landed on the lake nearby. And all of a sudden, all the noble women are seized with a desire to have these birds as ornaments, one for each shoulder. No one really knows quite to do about this. So eventually, someone decides Cuchulain's the man for this, the greatest of the Irish heroes. He can do just about anything, even capture or kill birds without maiming them. So someone goes to him and asks if he'll do that. And at first, he's reluctant, to put it mildly, but he's basically guilted into doing it, which is an interesting little tidbit, which I'll spare you in the interest of time. There's all sorts of things in these stories that are just almost like throwaway lines that you can unpack if you want. Anyways, so he manages to do it pretty easily. He gets all the birds without maiming them, so that they're still going to be nice ornaments. And he starts distributing them among the noble women. But unfortunately, he runs out just when he gets to his own wife. She's like, well, don't worry about it. I don't really care. I feel honored already that my husband has done these great deeds. But he feels shamed, and he promises her that he'll get her even more beautiful birds than these. So bad idea. Anyways, so lo and behold, in just a few minutes, two birds more beautiful than the others start flying over the lake, and they're linked with a golden chain between the two of them. They're singing so sweetly that almost everybody falls asleep except for Cuchulain and his charioteer and his wife. And he starts to get into his chariot, and his wife and his charioteer both tell him not to. It's like, just don't bother. You don't need to do this, but he does it anyways. So he's riding after the birds, and he asks his charioteer to give him a sling stone, and he winds up and misses. For the first time in his life, he misses a shot. And he misses the second shot as well. And he's kind of bewildered now. He gets his javelin out, and he launches his javelin and manages only to graze one of the wings of the birds. And then they fly off. Failure is not really in his vocabulary. So he's kind of angry and bewildered. He stalks off at the shores of a lake, sits down by a stone pillar, and despite his anger, falls asleep. As he's sleeping, he's dreaming, and in his dream, two women come to visit him, one wearing green, one wearing red, and they start to beat him with horsewhips. At first, they're kind of smiling and laughing, but then it becomes serious, and they just whip him until he's really within an inch of his life. And when he wakes up, although his body's unblemished, he's completely debilitated. His companions carry him to his sickbed, and there he languishes for about a year until the next Samhain comes along. Everybody's gathered again. His friends are all gathered by his bed, wondering what to do. He's neither spoken nor eaten nor drank this entire time. And then a strange messenger arrives. Nobody really sees him coming, but there he is. He introduces himself as Angus, brother to the two women that beat him. And he's basically come to offer healing and peace to Cuchulainn, which he offers in verse, which is very nice. Oh, yeah, and by the way, he says, my sister Fond is in love with you. She was the one wearing red. And at this, Cuchulainn perks right up. And starts speaking again. He tells everybody what happened, and he asks for advice, and he's told by his king, well, you should go back to that same pillar, that stone pillar that you fell asleep at, and see what happens. So he does, and the lady in green shows up, and she again offers him peace and friendship, and says, well, my husband is having some difficulties. He's being beset by his enemies, and we need your help to come and fight them for us. He's still feeling a little weak, and he doesn't quite trust this woman yet, so he sends his charioteer to go check things out. So his charioteer goes, and everything's all incredibly beautiful there and magical, and he speaks with Fond, who confirms that this is a genuine offer and that she really is in love with Cuchulainn, and everything's as it seems. So...
that's the lady in red, not the lady in green.
The lady in red, Fond, is the one who's in love with Cuchulainn, yeah.
Right, but the lady in green is the one whose husband needs his help.
That's right.
Right, okay.
That's right. And they're sisters. The lady in red and green are sisters. And their brother was the messenger.
Okay.
I forgot to mention, yeah, sorry, I'm kind of garbling this. My apologies. I had a really funny joke.
Okay, just want to, yeah.
Yeah. So what happens then, one thing I forgot to mention is that Fond is the wife of the sea god Manannan. So it's a little confusing in these stories where exactly the line between God and otherworldly supernatural being lies.
Right.
So it's, yeah, who knows? In any case, Cuchulainn goes, and everything is as beautiful as was described, Fond included. He goes to war to fight the enemies of Fond's sister's husband, Bifin is her name, and makes short work of them. And it's interesting, too, this is kind of a digression, but there's all sorts of parallels of this story and other stories from the Celtic world, from Wales and Brittany, which I'm not going to go into now, but just the richness of material is incredible. Anyways, he makes quick work of the enemies, and then he and Fond become lovers for a month, after which he decides it's time to go home. But before he does, he and Fond make a assignation. They're going to meet again at a certain time and place. Cuchulainn's wife finds out about this. She's not too pleased. She arms herself with sharpened knives and distributes them to 50 of her closest female companions. And they all show up at the trysting place, ready to kill Fond. This is where the story then becomes more psychological than mythological. Then follows a lengthy discussion between Cuchulainn and Fond and Cuchulainn's wife, Emer, about the relative merits of the case. And Cuchulainn's torn. He doesn't want to desert his wife. He also doesn't want to give up Fond. But in the end, he decides he should stay with his wife. But doesn't quite realize what he's agreed to, what he's getting into, because when Fond leaves him in the company of her husband, they're now becoming reconciled, he sees her leaving and he just loses it. He goes mad, he runs away, and he goes hiding in the mountains, eating neither food nor taking drink. And it takes all of the tribe's most powerful druids to entice him out and subdue him and eventually give him a drink of forgetfulness so that he can't remember the whole thing. They also give the same drink to his wife because she's so consumed with jealousy that she has no peace. And Fond, who has openly admitted to her husband that she would have preferred to have stayed with Cuchulainn, she doesn't get a drink of forgetfulness, but her husband, Manadan, waves his cloak in between Fond and Cuchulainn so that they can never meet again. And that's the end of the story as we have it.
Wow.
Yeah. So not a parallel in any case, in any way, to the story that Patsy told in terms of duties being neglected, but still has the element of tragedy to it.
And something of like implicitly there is something about no, I think it's actually very similar. The duties being neglected are those of the householder, those of the husband.
Right.
And yeah, and so in the cowherd story, what's it, Patsy? Qiniang, what was her name?
妻女嘛，妻娘母，织女。
Right, those who weave the thread. That's right. Okay. Yeah, now I'm remembering it.
Can I draw some parallel?
I have some in mind, but let me. Yeah, why don't you?
So Chinua, she's in charge of relationship, right? Weaving relationships. So Fons and her community, her husband, they are in relationship too. So the way the story that John told, how it happened is kind of a play out of human drama of emotions and jealousies. And those are definitely parts of relationships. So, I mean, when I was younger, listening to that story, I probably would have a complete different take to that. But now, since I'm 6 decades long, I started to develop a different sense when I see human drama, trauma, and fights, betrayal. I started to look for something other than the surface level stuff. So yes, I heard a lot of relationship weaving in the story that John just told.
Yeah. I think like the theme that connects them, that is relevant to probably all of us at some point in our lives. It's like the impracticality of this. I want to say like divine love, but that makes it seem like it's something not erotic and not bodily. So I don't mean that by divine love, but I mean like this love, this kind of like love, or this kind of passion that just makes every practical thing seem irrelevant. It becomes the most important thing in the world when you connect with that person, when you fall in love with that person. Nothing else seems important in your life than getting together with this person, and you do neglect. Sometimes you do neglect your duties, where your duties seem like duties that you got to get out of the way so that you can get back to the love. And so I think that both of these stories are kind of playing with that, like the love of an immortal for a mortal, like the immortal being that which is not of really this world and all of its dramas and its duties and responsibilities, like how incompatible that is with the world. Like, how do you fit those two things together?
Yeah, it's interesting when they're having this three-way discussion about who Cuchulainn should stay with. He says to his wife, "Look, this woman is the paragon of all virtue, and I'm unparalleled as a hero and a warrior and a man. Why are you trying to keep us apart?" And she responded saying, "Well, why are you trying to shame me in front of your entire tribe?" Basically. And if you're going to talk about duty, I mean, now that you mention it, yeah, Cuchulainn was the protector of his people, which is as everybody would have known and probably does know now. He stands alone against an invading army later, when all of his companions are laid low with labor pains, which is kind of a funny joke, but there they were. So yeah, he really is like the protector. Even his name, Cuchulainn, means the Hound of Ulster or the Hound of Culann. Mm-hmm. So in terms of a protective dog, in essence.
Right. So, in the Patsy story, they still get to meet once a year. So there's also like a tryst that has been arranged. And that to me is a much more satisfactory arrangement, that because it acknowledges that, yeah, actually you do need to give some time for the divine, for pure untrammeled eros, for just the love that is the only thing that's relevant in that moment. You have to actually, whether it was supposed to be once a week, but it becomes once a year. But there's an acknowledgement, like the Jade Emperor commands that they be allowed to have at least some time together. So like I don't know. I wonder if there's like a, because in the story you told, John, it really is either or,
Yeah.
And I mean, I wonder how many of us, husbands and wives, have faced that soul-tearing choice, and what would it be to acknowledge the validity and the necessity of these beyond worldly connections? Like, because if you don't acknowledge them, if you don't allow space for them, then the material world of the normal human dramas becomes very tawdry and stifling. If we don't keep some window open to the sacred dimensions, the transcendent dimensions. Let's maybe call them transcendent dimensions. Where we're not supposed to. I mean, we're here incarnated for a reason. The goal of life isn't to transcend life. That would be dumb. But if there's not at least some connection that we maintain to the transcendent, then we like experience being in a prison. It'd be like in a prison with no windows. And so there needs to be at least a window, and I think, and this is true in a relationship too. Like if the relationship becomes only about, who's going to take out the recycling tonight, and like all the things that you have to do to run a household, and who's going to drive the kids to soccer practice, and oh my gosh, the mortgage is due, and like all this kind of stuff. Like if you forget that, like, when you're just falling in love and you have those moments of like really seeing the full soul of this person, and connecting in a level that isn't even about this lifetime. Some of us have had loves like that, but I think even in like the most juvenile infatuation, high school crush, there's actually a glimpse of that too. Like every high school couple, who's just falling in love and is totally obsessed, has a huge crush on each other, they're always going to say, this is you don't understand. You don't understand. This is different. This is unique. This isn't like all the other relationships. This is special. It really feels special. Like they will be adamant, and there's nothing you can say that will dissuade them. And the reason for that is that they're right. It is unique and special. There is like a transcendent dimension to that. And like, yeah, like you can't be in that all the time and neglect your duties. You'll get in trouble. People will not let you do that. And the Jade Emperor will get upset. And the rest of the tribe will no, you can't do that. Because fundamentally, that's not what you're here for.
I'd like to
go ahead.
Share some the Taoist perspective. I really resonate with what you're talking about, by the way, Charles, about being in life, being human is not about transcending life, but it's about transcending something. Let me backtrack, sidetrack a little. There has been several Western mythology, such as Sisyphus. It's a tragedy kind of a mythology, a punishment for eternity that is turned into the Taoist paradox perspective. So when I heard this story John just presented, like back of my mind, I was smiling, thinking that, oh, if that play out in this realm intuitively or like based on my own background, my impulse, if I was the wife, I would begin to negotiate, try to figure out how do I validate your experience while I validate mine. So we can try to weave this reality, like both are true together. And oftentimes, what I see as tragedy, the absolute of separation is this or that. Oftentimes is the seeing the other person's truth and being willing to find connections between the two were missing.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
the middle way, 中庸之道.
yes, and also in marital affair relationship throughout times in Chinese world, there is a very strong virtue in marriage as well as love relationship outside of marriage. And from the Western world or from the perspective of the smaller mind, jealousy, possessiveness perspective, people can come up all kinds of reasons to justify the like non-allowance of that. But from the perspective of the feeling of love, it's a very liberating to find a new positional role for societal relationship and virtue. I'm talking about direct experiences because once upon a time, long time ago, I was very possessive, very, very jealous woman. But there was one time, like in the middle of my life, I was confronted with a paradigm where I have to choose to expand my vision to see, wow, why is someone else's love valid or invalid comparing to mine? And then when I was challenged to that paradigm, wow, my whole life shifts. Mm.
I have something to say about that too, but I also want to see if John has any further comments right now. But just yeah, go ahead.
The next time Cuchulainn is solicited by a goddess, even if he doesn't remember what happened to Fawn, he turns her down almost contemptuously. It's almost like, and who knows if the two stories are at all related, but it's almost as though his body remembered or his soul remembered. Don't even do this.
Wow.
Yeah. And from the Greek mythology, if anybody's interested in the myth of Tithonus, who was the beloved of the goddess of the dawn, Eos, that also is kind of an example of what happens when you do try to live in that space forever. It doesn't work well for the mortal.
What happened to Tithonus?
Well, Eos asked if Zeus could give him eternal life, and Zeus said, "Sure," but she forgot to ask for eternal youth.
Oh no!
Yeah, so he's got older and older and wizened and decrepit, padding about her palace without purpose.
Wow!
Forever.
Whoa! Padding about without purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So to kind of weave some of these things together, what Patsy was speaking about, like making space for the transcendent, making space for what doesn't fit in to domestic love, that challenges it, but that ultimately sustains it and enlivens it. Like you could call it a prison, it becomes a prison if you can't open the door. Basically, if you can never go outside. If you can go outside, then it's not a prison anymore, it's a home. But people, when they're jealous and possessive and controlling, and this isn't just about love, actually. I mean, this is about any of the dimensions of life that don't fit, the wildness, the adventure. It's always impractical to have an adventure. I'm thinking now of the Truman Show, the movie. John, are you the only person on earth who hasn't seen that, or have you even seen it?
Yeah, I haven't seen it.
You haven't? Well,
no.
It is a beautiful movie, and basically the premise is that this guy Truman lives in a TV set. He's the only one who doesn't know it. Everybody else is in on it. Everybody else is an actor in his life. But it's it's the world's largest TV set. It has streets and houses and surrounded by an ocean that's supposed to be on an island. And he's afraid of water, so he never leaves the island. Even his wife is an actress, and so at one point he's talking to his wife. Let's go on an adventure. Let's go to Fiji. Let's go somewhere. Let's get off this island. And she just comes up with one reason after another why they can't. But honey, the mortgage, honey, the da da da. Like she always has these really practical reasons that make sense on their own terms.
Mm-hmm.
But as a totality, they don't make sense. As a totality, they're saying, play it safe forever. And that is confining, it's stifling, it's soul killing, So I think that one thing that these stories are about, or could be about, it's this tension. And a line from Blake is coming to me as well. Eternity is in love with the productions of time. I guess that's about how eternity and the transcendent are enfolded into all of creation. But it's also about this erotic tension and longing, between our earthly selves that we have come into and forgotten that we were more, and the lingering memory of that we are more, and the longing to reunite with those forgotten parts. I don't know, Patsy, maybe if should we go into an introspection about that and some imagery, or do you and John want to add anything further? John's shaking his head. Patsy, what do you think?
Nothing to add.
Yeah.
Yeah, that I would love that. I think many people are listening to this podcast for this part of the practice.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I again, like my usual disclaimer, like,
Charles, you have to put it.
I still like to call things a practice, like practice for what? But I do think that there's value in visiting some of the images in a more focused way. So yeah. So let's let's do that. I mean, I'll close my eyes. And just tune into some of these images here. The weaver of the threads of destiny. One of these sisters. These threads that connect us before our lifetime, right? The red thread that pulls us together with those people or with that person. And that recognition that most of us have experienced, even if we denied it, but it's a feeling. I know you. This is more than just this world. Uchaman. Casting his stones and javelins, trying to capture, trying to bring down the goddess and turn it into a mere adornment for his wife, trying to incorporate it, trying to tame it. and suffering greatly for that attempt. And then being told and realizing that his service as a warrior isn't just for Earth, isn't just for his tribe. Yet it is also for his tribe. And then this agony of choice, stepping back into confinement, shutting the door, forgetting that this ever happened. And then the next chance denying it, saying, no, it's really bleak for me. And so here I sit, and here we are, still in hopeful awe of the touch of the transcendent, immortal, in love with us. And our longing to frolic in the fields of immortality, in the love embrace of that which is not just of this world. That puts us in touch with our immortality, our immortal soul. That even the high school crush recognizes. And we feel in this moment the passionate love of our own immortal self toward our mortal self, towards our bodies, towards our homes, towards all that makes us human. And maybe we make a date with ourselves. We plan a tryst, maybe every year, maybe every week, maybe a little bit every day. To leave this world for a few minutes and be in the presence of this immortal, transcendent love of ourselves toward ourselves. Doing it right now. And feeling this peaceful, infinite, passionate, ecstatic love. Standing outside the home, the castle. In the air, the sunlight. And turning back toward the home. Entering into it again, into the body again, but we leave the door open. Okay. So thank you. Thank you, John, for coming on and joining us. Thank you, Patsy. Yeah. And thank you to the various goddesses in human form. Because how do they actually appear if not in human form? Thank you to all of them that have touched me in my life with the transcendent, even if they became wives and domestic partners. Thank you, Patsy, for those moments that we've had where we really saw the god and goddess in each other, and we're in love with that. And
I have a nostalgic moment that I want to share.
Okay,
we can cut it out if it's too personal, but
Yeah,
I just
well,
feel like I want to.
yeah. Okay.
30 years ago, John came to visit Taiwan, and three of us were living together for a while. And wow, it's been 30 years. And I remember the first time I met John, and also John and I went to Ai to get you a
Oh,
present
God.
as a secret. And I remember
That's
the journey.
One of my
Bye-bye.
happiest memories.
That's like it'd be like an entire, I don't know, not Walmart, but an entire store, but like compressed into like a quarter of the size. And just like a frenzy of shopping. Oh my God, it's like hell on earth. But yes.
Yeah. John came to Taiwan during the bottleneck of modernity rushing into Taiwan and occupy Taiwan's culture. It was very interesting to me to experience that. It was the first time I saw the superstore in Taiwan.
Yeah.
And why did I say that? Oh, I say that was because in the meditation, I was kind of transcending time a little bit, and suddenly there was a recognition of myself 30 years ago that if I asked myself 30 years ago, would I imagine this moment? Of course not, right? But there is a feeling that continues, a feeling of affinity, like something beautiful that was going to continue. And I just feel so grateful for this moment. It's like, wow, I couldn't have been able to make this kind of plan myself. I'm such a planner, such a controller. I want to make sure things go a certain way, but I could not have planned this. And I just so grateful. And I love your stories, John, always. I can't wait for more.
Thanks. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And if this is a hit with your podcast audience, next time I can tell the story about the would-be farmer who goes to the livestock market in Jamaica.
Okay, that sounds interesting.
All right, I gotta go back to being a peasant.
Yes.
Okay, John.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye,
everyone.
Bye-bye.
See
Bye,
you.
everybody. See you next time on the Half Moon podcast, everyone.
And please give us a donation if you're able.
That would be nice. Yeah, that's what we're hoping to do. And we will be so delighted to join you again on the next Half Moon or in the online forum that you can also join by doing something that Patsy will tell you to do, which is what?
Yes, go to our website and click
Yes.
on Halfmoon Podcast Forum Community.
Yeah. Okay. See you
Bye.
next time, everybody.